Alright, finally, it's the weekend. It is beautiful outside. I have been working all week looking forward to this. Finally, we get to work back on this bike again. It's only been a week, but I'm excited and I'm happy to do so as always. So, we got some parts right here. So as you know from the last video, and if you weren't watching that video and you're new to this, I blew my engine on my Vento out there. I locked it up from running it too lean and not with the right jets and the carburetor. And ever since the last video, when I ripped this engine out the bike, I have started to disassemble it. I have took the top end of everything off and I got to see all the scarring in the piston. That's cool. Here she is. And as you can see in the sides right here, really you can still run it with it, you know, scratched up like that. I mean, it's not good to do so, but there are some really deep gouges up in here right there. So that's where the internal damage happened at. And it was grinding against the jug in the engine and caused it to lock up. So I disassembled the whole top end. I gotta get out these two studs here still, but I got new studs over there, so I'm not worried about ripping them out. But I got all that disassembled and I got down to the crank right here. And I got everything else in the transmission over here taken apart what needs to be. I have all the wires disconnected from what needs what, so I can have it sitting to be worked on right now. Speaking of a crank, we got it covered. Not the best crank, okay? For you people out there, oh, why didn't you go with Polini? Why didn't you go with Melosi? You got everything else. Because it's not available and it's not going to be available for a long time. So, we still got Naraku, baby. Naraku is built and reinforced. It is still the same stroke as a regular crank is in this engine, but it is a built crank and it's pretty. It is pretty. It's all put together. Two strokes have a really small crank. Look how small this thing is. A four stroke has a much longer stroke itself, but so this is here. This is in one piece. Came with the kit. We also got all the goodies for the bottom end of this engine. We got stage 6 bearings and seals up here, and they come with two different bearings, so it's going to be of my choice which ones to use. I don't know what I'm going to run yet, but it is in here and it is optional. That's cool. We got gaskets. We got scooter parts gaskets. We got freaking Polini Corsa specific gaskets with the squish ring and the exhaust gasket for the Corsa kit, which if you follow my channel, you can see in my shorts I have ordered as well. We got the exhaust studs, Naraku. We got Melosi studs for the engine. We got extra just in case Naraku studs for the engine. We got Polini freaking seals right here. Everything we need for the bottom end of the engine is here in one piece right now. But I am not going to be putting that crank in this engine today because I do not have the tools for the flywheel and I don't have a crank puller. There's a few things I simply don't have, but Scooter Tuners in Monroe opens back up on the 14th. Is going to take care of it, baby. You know, they're going to rip the engine apart. They're going to get it where it needs to be. They got the tools for the job. Bing, bow, boom. So that's cool. That's just for the bottom of the stuff. I'm gonna put the top end of everything together myself and everything else, but I just don't have the tools to get this apart and everything put in place that I need to. So basically what's going on is I got the bottom end stuff in my possession and the shop is putting that together, but I have the top end stuff ordered and on the way too. So I'm gonna build the motor. The motor is being built since it's out of the bike and it's being put together, but in the meantime is the best time to take care of everything else. And as you seen in the last video, there was loose plastics. I already got that fixed up. I'll show you what's going on there. There's some front end stuff going on, but this is gonna be the time to make it shine, to prime it, to get it good, to get it dialed in, to get everything else around the bike besides the motor where I want it to be. So let's get right into that, huh? So last time when I got this bike, basically this whole rear fender here was just sideways, hanging off, not even connected. The bolts underneath were just broken and snapped and stripped, and I wanted to get this thing solid and secure like it is now. It looks a little wiggly just because it's plastics in the back, but that's in there, dude. Now inside of here, what I did is there are mounts for this grab bar back here, and inside of that grab bar I took two zip ties and I zip tied it from each end over here, and I went underneath behind this tail light and I drilled two holes in the top here and I ran zip ties through there and connected it to the back here to create a tight non-wiggle, because I can move the whole bike just by moving up and down on this piece. Sweet. Over here there's a huge panel gap from this bucket seat and the fairing back here. So I took a screw and I screwed it into the plastics itself. And then once I got that screw in there, I was just gonna take a zip tie and loop it through to this bucket piece, but the screw stayed so solid that I kept it there, and I just ran a zip tie from the bucket fairing to the plastics here, and it is now solid in one chunk, and you really won't even notice it once I get everything painted and glossed over. So that's one piece now. Right there is where the plastic rear fenders connect to at the back of the bike. And so what I did is I just screwed a hole through there, and then I took a zip tie and I zip tied it. Same thing on that side over there. So it's all one solid piece now. The rear end is all together. That turned out great. But here's what I want to address today, because it is bothersome. So if you look, the front tire is straight with the headlight, straight on like this. But the handlebars, they are not. So I already looked at the triple tree. The triple tree is not bent, thank God. I can only imagine how hard it would be to find a triple tree for this bike, but it's not. So inside of here, where the handlebars connect to your triple tree, there's a little nut that connects onto itself, and it's probably just loose or twisted out of place. So we gotta take off this front fairing here, front plastics here, and get to that nut so I can loosen it up, straighten it out, and put it back where it needs to be. Here's something I found I don't like. These screws come out no problem. These screws are next, right? Well, because of this big ass body that it has, so you get your Phillips head in there, you can't. Because dude, the hood, whatever you want to call it, is so big and bulbous that no matter what angle you tweak this at, so it's scooted all the way this way, I already tried this, you still can't get your screwdriver to fit flush up in there and get these screws out. So you got to take off this whole thing just so you can get up in there to get those screws out. I'm learning something new about this bike, but I don't like this. Well, that's sweet. So you don't even need to take off this whole fairing up here. Once you unbolt these screws back here that connect to this piece, it just separates itself. And it turns out that you can access the nut that I'm looking for right here that holds the handlebar on right there in front of you. Look how accessible everything is. There's a ton of room for stuff up here. So much more room than those tight little towels. And I did look at the triple tree from the top and from the side, and everything is lined up. Everything is straight, so it is not bent, but we're gonna get into that nut back there right now and get her straight. All right, she's straightened out. She's not perfectly straight because that nut only turns so far. I don't know, it might be a tiny bit bent or something, but really not a big deal. It's only off by like tiny little smidge. This bike is too. I think they just warp easy, whatever. It's definitely a lot straighter than it was, so that's good. And while I got the front end open like this, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten down every nut I can see, including every single bolt, every single nut, just make sure everything is tight, snug fit, because this thing has been gone through since, what, there's spider webs, cobwebs in there. So just gonna go through and tighten everything down and clean everything up. All right, so the front end is all back together, and everything went together really, really easy. It just slipped right back into place, and every screw went in first try. The build quality on this thing is seriously amazing. The plastic pieces fit right back up where they're supposed to. Everything feels snug and secure. But I also just went through this whole bike basically. All the 10mm bolts, all the 8mm bolts on the front end, everything on the plastics, you know, the screwdriver, everything that I could basically tighten, I went through and tightened. And this thing really holds together. This thing has not been maintained like it should be. But I mean, everything is basically tight. I mean, there's just a few things I had to do just to twist, and this bike is solid. So I'm really happy with that, going through this bike and noticing all that stuff. But the thing is filthy. Everything on this bike is really filthy, crudded up, just a bunch of mud, literally spider webs everywhere, just gunked up stuff. This has not been cleaned. Look at the paint. The paint on this thing is horrible. There's just gouges everywhere. It is cracking. None of this stuff is really sticking anymore. The turn signals and the headlight need to be cleaned off and cleared up again. But so right now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean this entire bike. I'm gonna clean all the surfaces and just get everything ready to be sanded down, because I'm not keeping it this color. The paint is just not good. It doesn't look good. Look at all this stuff over here. So I'm gonna repaint this whole thing. But right now I just wanna go through and clean everything and get it nice and ready to go. All right, it's the next day and you didn't even know it. I was exhausted, I had to go to sleep. I've been working a lot of hours, but yeah, the sun is shining, let's get this thing clean, man. So it didn't really do too much, except for the front wheel and the wheel well up here and all the internals in the back, stuff, the little crevices. That's where all the gunk and everything built up at. But the rims turned out great, but the paint is still just a mess. I mean, there's just peeling stuff everywhere. The plastic film that was over is coming off. All these badges are just very cracky and old, and that's why we're painting this thing. We're gonna get rid of all the badges except for that R4 right here. I got a plan for this where I'm gonna tape this off so that this will still be present on both sides, even though I'm painting this bike white and Polini blue, because I ordered all those Polini parts. I might as well make the bike match. And I always wanted a bike with white rims and a blue outline anyways, kind of like the R6s on the big bikes. Kind of funny this is an R4. So yeah, the bike, it looks good. You know, I just wanted to clean everything up and handle this business on outside to get it prepped for sanding everything down, priming, and painting this thing in the meantime of doing everything else. And that's where we're gonna end it off today, guys. I know it's not the most exciting video right now because this is like the midway point in between of building the engine and the intake system and the exhaust and all that fun stuff. But these are all the little details you need to worry about. Is dialing everything else in around you. I'm glad I have this little chunk of time to do so, to make sure that this build is authentic, that it is a quality build, that it's just gonna be beautiful and it's gonna rip, you know what I'm saying? So I'm happy to do these things anyways. These are things I like to do. So we're gonna get this thing painted. That should be in my next video. I'll have that top end Polini kit in my possession too. And we're gonna be putting that engine in the shop so the bottom end can be put in there. Next week is gonna be a good week for this bike right here. But right now, this is just the small detail stuff, but that's okay. It doesn't matter because here we are. So thank you guys very much. Till next time.